All right, on our blog today, we have a guest visitor. Not long ago, our colleague Frank Bonkowski, who you know from our intermediate and advanced writing course, introduced me to a great connection, Chris Rush from Off2Class. And we had a call not long ago where he shared some of their products and their work with me. And I was excited to then share it out to the English Learner Portal community as well. So today we have Chris here. Chris, you want to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about Off2Class?
Yeah, hi, absolutely. Thank you so much for having me here, Kelly. I work with Off2Class.com, and Off2Class is an online ESL toolkit for English teachers. So just in a nutshell, it is a platform that has about 850 ready-to-teach lessons, a comprehensive placement test that matches all of a student's errors up with the lessons in our library, as well as student management and homework. And it's set up in such a way that it can be done and used in the classroom as part of an in-classroom experience. It can be done online as just an online-only platform. And we also have schools that use it as a blended platform where some of the learning is taking place at home and some is taking place in the classroom.
Excellent. So you hit on a lot of things that I know will perk up our teachers' ears there. The whole already created lessons. I mean, who doesn't want a bunch of that? We spend a lot of time. And even though we take them and tweak them, having something to start with is amazing. And also the idea of the pre-assessment, so you can really fine-tune. We talk a lot in English Learner Portal about being very targeted and explicit. And so pre-assessment is the way to start that. With your pre-assessment, tell us a little bit about that. It's done online. How long does it take for students to work through that?
Yeah, well, just to kind of back up for one moment, you know, that kind of evolved when the library of lessons started to get really large. You know, it started to say, oh, how we have all these lessons in the library and we need to give teachers a way to sort of navigate this. And so the placement test grew as a way to say, okay, we can sort of make this tailored course that's based on the mistakes that the student made. So there are multiple parts of the placement test. The first thing that the placement test covers is grammar. So it's got a grammar component that's going to ask your student 100 questions about every aspect of English grammar. And so by going through that, you're going to get a great idea not only of what your student can and cannot do in terms of grammar, but because we send you a teacher the full error report once the student completes the test, you can see where all of the gaps are, where all of the fossilized errors are in your student's understanding. So the test will get this thorough understanding of your student's grammar. And then based on how your student performs on that grammar section, you can then optionally choose to send your student speaking, listening, reading, and writing portions of the test. And so the test, because it is graded your student's grammar, it will then give your student level appropriate reading, listening, speaking, and writing prompts. And so what the rest of the test will do is it will tell you after the student completes the listening section, yes or no, does this student's listening competency match up with their grammar competency? Same thing with the reading. It'll give them a text to read and then comprehension questions. So, and then it will tell you if whether or not your student's reading ability can line up with their grammar score. And then we do something a little bit different for the active skills for both speaking and writing. Even though the student has a chance to actually write and into the box and you can see it, and the student will have a chance to speak and the microphone will record the student's answer. Those are ungraded, but then as a teacher, you'll be able to make the determination, oh, does my student's actual writing ability match up? So that can really help when it comes to things like certain students being really strong in grammar, but have trouble stringing two coherent sentences together. It's gonna highlight those things so you'll know about those. As far as how the test is administered, it can be done on any device. So, you know, when we work with an online school, it'll something that's exclusively online. But in a lot of the K-12 institutions we've worked with, they're choosing based on their use case maybe they have the students take it at home, or they bring all the students together in a computer lab and they test everyone at once. It just depends on what the logistics are of the particular district or school.
Right. Right, so you have the flexibility to whether it's whole class, one student you're concerned about, or school-wide, whatever combination you want to have there.
Absolutely, right. So you can assign the test, to a single student, or you can assign it to an entire cohort of students, whether it's class-wide or institution-wide, in essentially a single click.
Right. I think teachers would love the connection of the pre-assessment then to specific lessons, right? Save a lot of time searching through your library. Great saver there, plus to have a lesson to match the skill perfect. But also, we talk a lot when we're working with our teachers that by federal law, we're required to do our annual English language proficiency assessment once a year. So it usually happens for most states, for most students, in the January through March timeframe. They have the big English language development assessment. They get these scores for listening, speaking, reading, and writing. By the time you get the scores, it's the end of May or June. We're finished school soon after. And they come back to school August, September, and now our scores are 6, 7. So I can see this being a great resource when we come back into school to do a formative check. We know what their last formal assessment was. We can do a little informal check here and then get a better gauge. Now, are there ongoing formative assessments? Like every so often you could recheck progress and see how students are doing?
Yes. So the placement test draws questions from a large bank. And so typically what people at schools do is they will assess the students at the beginning of a year, for example, and then again at the end of the year. And it will test the same competencies with different questions. So there you'll be able to get an actual qualitative understanding of, is my student growing? Are they making the same mistakes? Where is the growth and where do they still need more help?
Excellent. Right. We don't love to spend a lot of time testing students, but we certainly need to check in now and then because, again, we keep talking about having very accurate data, so you're not wasting any time teaching something they're either not ready for or already have in their pocket to go with. Yeah.
And I think one of the other things that schools are really appreciating right now is we have, all of the lessons that are going to be given on a student's learning plan which matches up with errors in the placement test. Those are all single skill lessons, right? Those are lessons that all cover a very specific point. However, our newest set is called the StepByStep Curriculum. And in the StepByStep Curriculum, they're multi-skill lessons and that are designed to be sequential in nature. And so what a lot of schools are doing now is they'll give a student a placement test. When the student gets those errors, then there's a specific set of single skill lessons that can help this individual student target their weaknesses. So those can be assigned as some self-study activities or some flipped classroom approach based on the individual needs of a student. And then what happens in the group setting is teachers will then use lessons from our sequential multi-skill series, the step-by-step curriculum, so that way they have something that's kind of covering all the skills that's relevant for a larger set of students. So you have this kind of dual system where you've got something where all the students who are at a given level can be working on the same thing that's going to be relevant to their skill level, while at the same time, each individual student also has an individual learning plan that's based on their specific needs.
That's amazing. I mean, I think about how we are trying to pinpoint and be explicit. And I think this is a great resource, especially for, we work with teachers in larger districts with a lot of English learners who have either published curriculum or homegrown curriculum that the school system wrote themselves. But I would say a majority of the ELL teachers we meet don't have a real solid curriculum to work with, because they are more isolated, or they have a smaller number of students, the budget's not there, whatever it may be, or it might be a little outdated. And so that's one thing they're always asking us for, is to point them in the direction instead of making it all up yourself.
Sure.
Figure that out. So having that kind of resource to go to will be very valuable for a good group of teachers that we've met along the way.
Yeah, I think that's, if you wanted to kind of boil it down, the number one problem that Off2Class solves is that it saves teachers time, especially when you have teachers who are a little bit isolated, or, you have districts where you'll have maybe just one ELL teacher, right, for the entire district. And so it's like, at that point, it's such an uphill battle. So what Off2Class does at the end of the day really is it allows teachers to kind of keep tabs on and kind of track progress on a very large number of students, but with very little effort, right? It just allows teachers always to have something to teach, not need to plan any lessons, and make sure that that learners are getting better outcomes.
And I can also see it as the more and more we lean on our ELL teachers to be supports for classroom and content teachers, that if we have a third grade teacher or a middle school language arts teacher who is struggling with knowing what to do with a few students who are mainstreamed into regular ed classes, sometimes that happens, pretty early in an English learner's school career, and they may not be quite ready. So other teachers, content teachers, might need a little help with, how do I fill in the gaps that I'm seeing for my students? Or really, like, what do you think about just students in general? I mean, is this really targeted for English learners, or what about our regular ed native English speaking students who struggle with grammar or struggle with writing skills?
So it's very much ESL focused, but when you're talking about something like struggling with reading or struggling with writing, or some of these kind of more basic language level skills, yeah, it could absolutely be appropriate for those students as well. And we do get a lot of teachers who are not ESL teachers who are kind of pressed into service, so to speak.
Right.
And one of the ways that we support them is with all of our lessons, it comes with a set of teacher notes. So it really kind of makes it really suitable for even teachers who may not necessarily have any ESL specific experience at all, because with every lesson we teach, with every slide, there's always going to be the notes that's going to say, these are the questions to ask. If there are gap fills, this is the answer to the gap fills. This is what you need to keep in mind. And also, by the way, this is what's on the next slide. So you kind of always see what's coming. So we really try to make it as teacher friendly as possible, so that you don't need to have any kind of necessarily specialized knowledge to be able to use the platform effectively.
Great. So what should people do if this is sounding like a resource they want to check out, that they want to see what you have and how it matches what they're seeing in front of them in class? It's time to plan for our next school year. What find you?
Well, it's very easy to just go to Off2Class. So it's off with the 2 in it. So Off2Class.com. And once you get there, you'll be prompted right away to sign up for a free trial. And the free trial is 30 days. It will give you the chance to look at some lessons, to send the placement test. I mean, that's really the best thing you can do on a free trial, is to actually send the placement test, to your own a second email address, or to a real student, if that would work out. And that way, you'll really get a chance to see what are the mechanics of sending the test, what are the mechanics of taking the test, and what does this report look like that gets generated once a student completes the test, and what am I actually going to get in my hands that I can then sort of use as my jumping off point to plan a course. So I would say once you go to Off2Class.com and create a free trial account, it will ask you, what kind of teacher are you? And there'll be like a little drop down. And if the audience is K-12, it will say, I teach at a K-12 school. And based on what you select, then that's how we make our messages to you, more relevant. So, that's when we'll say, hey, this is going to help you based on your teaching environment. This is what's going to help you get the most out of the platform. So go to off2class.com, sign up for a free trial, open up a couple of lessons, take a look, send the test, and see what you think.
Excellent. And so for our school or district administrators that are part of our community, they can do the same if they're thinking about whether a school-wide license or a district license, or usually some kind of approval process.
Sure.
The teacher needs to go through the approval process. So your administrators should follow the same process to get a peek in and make sure they approve of all.
Yeah, and generally I would say for that kind of situation, if the possibility exists for a multiple teacher style of environment, the best thing to do is to come to the website, off2class.com, and then get in touch with us. Like so many other websites, we've got the little chat widget, in the bottom right corner. And once you kind of type something in there, we'll be able to kind of give, in that situation, a sort of like more personalized tour with a product specialist who will be able to say, what's the use case? What are your needs? What are the numbers? And we'll be able to kind of tailor fit a custom solution in that case.
Anything
Perfect.
to say about Off2Class before we?
No, that's it. Thank you so much for the opportunity. I would just encourage teachers to just take a look around and see it for themselves.
Well, thanks for joining me today, and especially thank you and your group. Send our thanks to the rest of them for all you're doing to support English learners, because there really is a shortage of resources out there. So you make it easy to access and easy to work with, which is a gift for our teachers. So thank you for that.
Thank you for having me, Kelly. I really appreciate it.
Talk soon.
Okay, thank you. Bye-bye.